the first 6 months are that's the game plan. That's what's going to make or break you. You got to get your shit together.
Absolutely. I mean, it's you just nailed it. It's when you realize how important you are. Because I think probably in a lot of divorces, that time right before you get divorced, you've completely lost yourself.
Yeah.
Like there's not too many scenarios that end up in a divorce if it's not that bad that you've not lost yourself.
Yeah.
And I mean, I like to think that I was probably a little bit luckier than most people because we were so young and we were going through so many weird things that divorce almost seemed natural at that point. Like in the progression of the way that everything else had happened, it seemed like the next natural step to both of us. It was like, oh, okay, you went through rehab and that was crazy. And let's get divorced because that just seems like that's probably the right thing to do. I tell people that, when he and I had that discussion and when we sat down to like figure out, okay, well, what's going with you and what are you taking and where are you going to live? The biggest thing that we argued over were, who gets the Nirvana import CDs that we had spent, 3 years collecting. Like,
Who ended up getting them?
I think I still have them.
Winning. But it was an
Yeah.
agreement. It wasn't a tug of war.
No, it was just like, these are things that are important to you and these are things that are important to me. So I feel like a lot of our divorce was just very organic and natural, it, and that's truly indeed how I know it was the right move too, is that there wasn't all of that fighting over it. It was organic and it felt natural and it felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah. Do you think that you sourced it or it was just amicable? Like I know, and I'll share with me, when I look at my divorce now, if I would have been just a little more of a dick, she would have taken me to the cleaners.
Right.
But
Yeah.
what I realized was that there was an agreement. We didn't move to step two because we understood. We're like, all right, here are the Nirvana CDs. And then we both understood what we wanted. And then we
Right.
agreed on it. And then there was nothing to disagree when we went through paralegal. So when we went through a paralegal, there was nothing to disagree about because we had already done the work
Right.
before that.
I kind of think that there was definitely a guilt factor for him.
Hmm.
He I think he felt very, very guilty about the things that he had put me through at that point. Rehab brings those things to light, definitely. You are forced to realize the things that you've done. And so I definitely feel like we both had guilt. I he had all of this guilt for the things that he had put me through, and I had guilt for leaving. I as much as I like to say it was amicable and organic and everything was cool, whatever, I still had a huge guilt factor. And I'm leaving a guy who just went through rehab 6 months ago. I'm an asshole. Like in my head at that time, even I remember thinking, I'm the most selfish person in the world. But in that also, I would have those moments of clarity of, but what about what you saw growing up? Like what's more important? Feeling selfish and feeling like an asshole for a minute right now, or being able to at the end of the day say that you were brutally honest with yourself and that you made the right choices for yourself in your own life. And that won. And that still sounds really selfish when I say it out loud, but I I also don't necessarily think that selfish is always a bad thing.
I don't either. And that's what I wanted to ask you next. What's the value of being selfish?
My whole life changed. Um, I mean, I can guarantee you that if I had not been selfish, eh, he would never have brought it up. Like, he would have stuck it out with a half-hearted attempt forever.
Yeah.
Um, And we would be living in a little town in Kansas, and it never would have been enough for me. I would have grown to resent him. Um, it would have been bad for both of us. Like the selfishness. I had those moments of like, God, I'm the most selfish human in the world. But when I look back on it now, neither of us would have been happy. It would have been a half-assed marriage. I guarantee you that there would have been cheating. He would have gone back to drinking at some point. Like, neither of us were going to be content. And I was just the one who was able to say it. And I guess I was able to take that responsibility on my shoulders and go, okay, yeah, so you want to call me selfish, or, anybody wants to view me as selfish, then that's fine. Um, because in the end, this is actually better for both of us. It's not just better for me. And it has been. He also went on to get remarried. I think that they're maybe divorced now as well.
Mhm.
Um, but he's gone on to do other things in his life. I wasn't the only one that had other things that I wanted to do. He wanted kids. I did not ever want kids. That's never been in the cards for me. Even as a kid, I was not that person that like sat playing Barbies and had, Barbie family. It was like Barbie and Ken going on vacation to Paris. It wasn't Barbie and taking the 6 Rugrats to the beach. Like it. So, I believe that he has a couple of stepchildren, and, he got to have that part of his life that he wanted to have. And if we'd stayed together, that just would have been another battle of no, I'm very willing to admit my selfishness and know that if I want to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go to CVS and buy some nail polish, I don't have to think about kid while I'm doing it. Because I'd probably just leave them there and lock the door. Like it's just not my jam. It's just not my thing.
And that's
And
okay. Like, that's
yeah,
okay.
completely. I know those things about myself.
Yeah.
But when you're 20 years old and getting married, when you do talk about those things, everybody goes, "Oh, you'll change your mind.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't know yet. Wait until you hold a baby. You'll change your mind." And I always knew I wouldn't, but as a 20-year-old, when, older people tell you that, you go, "Okay, maybe." As a 35-year-old, if I, had been in a relationship going into getting married, that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
You know, at 20, you kind of make those compromises and go, well, maybe it'll change. And, maybe we will have kids.
Yeah.
Maybe
How do
my
you
feelings will change.
how do you manage that? Like, how do you manage? Because when you're going through something, it is everybody, like when you say to somebody, I'm getting divorced, and everybody's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like every time I hear that, I'm just like,
Oh
I
my
don't
God.
think you
It's like
heard that
somebody
divorce
died.
is a fucking opportunity.
It
You didn't hear
legit,
that? I
yeah.
preface
Like
it with that.
people legitimately talk to you like someone died.
Yeah, like
And
somebody.
it's like, we're both still alive.
Yeah, yeah,
We're both going to go on with our lives.
yeah,
And great things might happen for both of us.
yeah. I'm
And
gonna find the rest of my life out of this.
right,
Hello.
like, yeah, I'm going to go and I'm going to get to grow as a human on my own and experience things that I probably would never get to experience if we were still together. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world. Everybody treats it with like such kid gloves. And
Yeah.
I'm like, he didn't die. He's still alive. Like,
He's still alive.
I'm still alive. We just aren't going to be alive together.
Yeah, I'm actually
Who
more
cares?
alive now. And if you're
Right.
paying attention,
Right.
you would hear that this is an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello.
There are a couple things that I'm always amazed by. It's people's response to I'm getting divorced. And when people ask me, do you have any kids? And I say no. And they go, oh,
Oh,
I'm like, the
what
fuck is
the
that?
fuck?
Like, really? Or when they go, oh, like when I meet people out on the road and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, do you have a family at home? And I'm like, no.
No.
And they're like, oh, well, maybe you'll decide to settle down eventually. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
why would I ever want to do that?
It's almost like they limit, and then when you look at them and if, most of the times, if when you follow that conversation, you notice that conversation there's no self-expression, or,
Oh no.
they're usually confined. But they've succumbed to this norm that gets
Hmm.
created. It's like, if something doesn't work, you need to stay in it, you need to work it out. And that's,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
find that to be true in some cases, and definitely when there's two people involved. But if one person's not there, there's nothing to work out. The only
There's
thing you got
not.
to work out is the fucking exit.
If you're not both fully invested in it,
Yeah.
it's not ever going to work itself out.
Yeah. People get, I
You
think,
both have to be as dedicated to it.
yeah. And they collapse the partnership. Partnership is two people.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
one person, it's two people. If one person's not in it, you can't. It doesn't,
No.
you can't breathe. You
Let's
suffocate, you smother, you
I
know.
remember somebody telling me, it was an older friend of mine when I got married. She was like, this is how I see marriage. Some days you're going to give 80% and he's going to give 20%. Some days you're going to give 20% and he's going to be the one giving 80%. It'll all always end up making 100, but you're never going to both be fully invested in it the same amount. And I was like, that's the saddest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life.
Mhm.
That is not ever how I want to live inside of a relationship. Like, yes, I do understand that there will be days that like you just don't have anything to give. To have that as your outlook for your entire marriage, that's just it. It's gross. It's a gross concept
Yeah,
that, oh yeah, no, you can slack for 5 years solid, but the next 5 years it's my turn to care. What?
yeah,
It's never made sense to me. I remember her telling me that and I was like, I don't think I want to get married.
yeah, yeah. It's like, no, I don't want that.
It's like, no, I don't want that
It
at
doesn't
all.
sound like there's any freedom. There's definitely no self-expression. There's no originality to it. It sounds like it's like the rest of the sheep. I don't want to do
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
it's beautiful when you find it, if you find it, like, and you can nurture it and you have two people involved. Amazing. But if, like,
Absolutely.
being honest with yourself, like, I hear your story and I think to myself, like, man, it took courage to do what you did, especially
It's
in rehab. Like, as
Well,
soon
and
as
it's
that
really
happened,
weird to
yeah,
look back on it, how young I was.
yeah,
Like, anytime that I have one of those moments, even now, as I'm older, that I question myself or I question my gut instincts, I I refer back to that and go, look at how strong you were. You were 19 years old. You were 20. It you've got it in you. And I feel like it's definitely been something that continues to prove itself to me time and time and time again. And I wish that I had some magic equation for how I found that strength, but I feel like a lot of finding that strength was the environment that I grew up in, um, and seeing the things that I did as a kid. And I wouldn't want to replicate that scenario for anybody. I wouldn't want anyone to see or have to live through some of the stuff that I did to find that strength. Um, but I also, I guess, I feel like I know a lot of people that have gone through things in their childhood that use those as a crutch instead of a strength.
yeah.
You're able, instead of saying, I won't be that, I'm going to grow and I'm going to be a different person than these people. Instead, they go, well, that's just what I learned. So I'm going to be that forever. And I refuse to use any of the things that I went through as a crutch and as some excuse for some shitty behavior. Doesn't work that way.
Do you think,
I say it to people all the time. Like, I'm living, breathing proof that you can take your environment growing up and you can completely 100% unlearn and rebel against it.
100%?
That's a wrap on another episode of Divorce the First 6 Months. Don't forget to hit subscribe for more insights. Take care.